mounted, because I'm gonna have, I got the remote and then guiding this, so. Yeah. It's a lot less. Yeah.
I live to breathe you, touch to feel you.
Okay.
The essence of you surrounds me. I sleep to dream you, awake to read you. You're the book I can't put down. I don't presume you feel exactly everything I feel. I uncover clues with every word you speak. I don't assume your passion is a play for everyone to see. When you're far away, you're never not here. I feel your presence all around me. I long to know you more, page after page. You're the book I can't put down. I don't presume you feel exactly everything I feel. I uncover clues with every word you speak. I don't assume your passion is a play for everyone to see. I don't presume you feel exactly everything I feel. I uncover clues with every word you speak. I don't assume your passion is a play for everyone to see. I live to breathe you, I touch to feel you. I feel your presence all around me. I long to know you more, page after page. You're the book I can't put down. Sun's going down, stars shine bright in the western sky. Night is still, desert comes alive. Oh, Okia, sleepy town on the Rio Grande. Take your time, lose yourself.
All right, good morning, everyone. Louder. Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. We'll begin shortly. Good morning. Welcome to Houston Oasis. I'm Abhishek Mathur, and I'll be your MC today. I'm also one of the board members of Houston Oasis. Houston Oasis is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're nonpartisan, and we welcome everyone guided by our core values that you see behind me here. And we have a great program for you tonight. I guess it's the morning. Similar. I guess not. All right. We have a great talk from Aron Ra, and our musical guest is Jim Cam, who's going to be playing a unique instrument called the Chapman stick. Let's start with a couple songs from Jim.
Good morning, y'all. Having a little bit of a cold snap. Last I checked, it was only 84 degrees. And no, this is not a sitar. It's one of the first few unique instruments invented in a long time. Maybe not since the saxophone. Anyway, this is a two-handed tapping guitar called the Chapman stick. I will always be here in these green hills. The road runs by. The sky is low at night. I will always be here in this place. I will always light fires at the end of the day. The smoke rising up in streams to the sky might attract a passerby. Tender is the night. When I am busy feeling mad, I don't care what they say. Not if I were a million boys. The key fell down the well. I have spent years thinking of the moon and how it makes me think of you. Tender is the night. When is a song a song? When is it a dream that's passing along? When is it a serenade for the shambling and shy? Something to hum, for vibrato to try. Something to whistle as the train passes by. When a love affair dies. Tender is the night. Tender is the night. Tender is the night. Thank you. As you gather by now, my stuff tends to be a little mellow. I like to think I write songs to slit your wrists by. You laugh now, but when you've listened to it long enough, probably have noticed that I tend to play in odd meters. That's just to discourage people who might think they want to dance. And I guess the only reason to write original songs is that so that people don't sing along and confuse. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jim. He'll be back for a couple of songs. All right, now I'd like to introduce Aron Ra, who's our speaker today. Aron and his wife Lilandra are here today, and they have spoken to us a few times before. Aron is a science communicator and a secular activist with a popular YouTube channel and a podcast. He's the director of the Phylogeny Explorer Project, a navigable online encyclopedic depiction of the entire taxonomic tree of life. He produces living science lessons in classroom supplements to teach high school biology. So Aron is best known for contesting the Texas Board of Education in their attempts to denigrate evolution, and he's spoken to us on those topics before. He's also the board member of the American Atheists, I believe, as well. And I think today's talk is entitled Whippomorpha. Is that right? Whippomorpha. Okay, let's go there. Whippomorpha. And I think it's not about hungry hippos.
Thank you much. Somebody should have primed me on using this remote. Which button do I push to advance?
Left and right.
Left and right. Okay, there you go. All right, on my channel, I like to make videos on phylogeny tech.
Can you go closer to the mic?
Sure, let me get over here. Start. How's that? Is that better? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, works better. Just the echoes.
All right, thank you. All right, one moment. Okay. As I was saying on my channel, I like to make videos on evolution, focusing on taxonomy. In the last year, I did a couple of series on the evolution of spiders and of snakes. And both of those had to be multiple episodes each because there was so much information in both of them. And I'm doing kind of the same thing with this. This is going to be the first episode in a series on the evolution of whales. Today's presentation is not the paleohistory of whales, but the history of the paleontology of whales. How generations of scientists eventually worked out what we know so far. And I personally find it fascinating to get into the heads of the pioneers. When you hit the advance on this, it drops down 5 slides at once. All right. Yeah, that's a little awkward. All right, so it's interesting to get into the heads of people from the embedded in the 18th century or the 19th century and see where they were and what influences, what presuppositions they had and how the information changed their direction, to see how the investigation proceeds. To me, it's not unlike a murder mystery, but beginning in the mindset of the 19th century. And if you want to see the paleo history of whales, that'll be a second episode that I'll make in studio and upload to my channel later this month. Let's see how many times this advances. There we go. There we go. Now we got it good. What? No, I'm not advancing this. I'm advancing this. So, there you go. Right, in this illustration of the biblical Jonah, we see that whatever this mysterious and shadowy sea monster is, it has fins. Not flukes or flippers, but fins like a fish. It also spouts water out of its nostrils like a whale. But whales undulate their tails up and down while this thing moves from side to side like a fish. Is this inconsistent image the fault of the artist or the author? In some translations of the Bible, like the King James Version, for example, Jonah 1:17 says that Jonah was swallowed by a great fish. But then Matthew 12:40 says that it was a whale. It's the same translation. One verse in Hebrew and the other in Greek, both into English. So how can it be both a fish and a whale? Which is it? The Greek Septuagint is a bit ambiguous because it uses a word that could imply either one. The Hebrew Bible uses a word that definitely means fish when it's talking about Jonah, but in Genesis 1:21, when many English translations say that God created the whales, there the Hebrew word used usually describes a monstrous serpent or dragon. So King James got that wrong. Thus we may interpret that Jonah was eaten by a monstrous fish, but not a sea monster, nor a whale. Well, it could be all three of these at once, because the biblical authors had no concept of taxonomy. Why would they? They classified animals the same way we classify created things like our vehicles. Is it a car or a truck, a sport utility, motorcycle? If it's a car, is it a crossover, a coupe, a sedan, or a spider? Usually spelled with a Y unless it's an Italian, a spider is a certain type of sports car made by a bunch of different companies: Porsche, Fiat, Alfa Romeo, Mazda. Whoever builds it, a spider is a small 2-seat convertible roadster. And most of these are marketed with that name, but even if they're not, does the 57 Corvette count as a spider? It does if it's a convertible, because created things are classified by what they do more than what they are. Because what they are is just a creation. There is no phylogeny, so it doesn't matter who the manufacturer or the parent company is. The Bible makes no distinction between swimming vertebrates that are exothermic and have gills versus those that are endothermic and have lungs. If the ancients even knew about all of that, they wouldn't think that it mattered. Why would it? Because they thought that these animals were spoken into being. Abracadabra. And remember that Genesis 1:21 says that God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. The Bible also describes a kind using the same definition we would use for the biological species concept, whether they can interbreed and bring forth fertile offspring. So God created every species all at once, all in the same day, with no room for evolution and thus no taxonomic hierarchy. The variety of life forms were therefore up to the arbitrary whim of the Creator. Thus, there's no reason to even ask why anything is the way that it is. That's just how the Creator wanted it. The Bible doesn't even distinguish between vertebrates and crustaceans. Does it have flippery flukes or fins on its tail? Then it's a fish. In the same way they would say that if an animal uses its arms as wings, then it's a bird. That's why the Bible says that bats are birds and that whales and lobsters are both fish. And if that sounds stupid to us, we who judge our ancestors from the privileged position of enlightenment are unaware of the depth of ignorance with which everyone who lived before us had to wade since time immemorial. It was a collective, cultural, eternal ignorance in which even the wisest were immersed and none were immune. And looking at medieval maps like this one from the 16th century, we can see how some people envisioned whales. This one, for example, was meant to be a whale. You can tell by the water spouting from its nostrils, but it's really a giant fish with ray fins and scales. And this isn't the one who swallowed Jonah. This is a different story. Somehow it's got a ship on its back and the Catholic crew in its belly. You can tell because the scales are drawn over the people as if we're looking into the fish. Pretty clever for the time. I don't know how they all got swallowed together with their furniture, but there they are, living inside this thing just like Geppetto. And this one has a mammalian face and external ears. Whoop, that did not advance. There we go. This one has a mammalian face and external ears, but it still has ray fins and scales. And a strange arrangement of additional eyes for whatever reason. No idea what the artist meant to imply here. And now look at these two. They're labeled for us. The larger one is a baleen whale, which by definition means that it shouldn't have teeth. The other one is labeled as an orca, also known as a killer whale. It's shown here with two nostrils, like baleen whales have, but orcas are essentially large dolphins, and dolphins have only one nostril. And both of these also have mammalian paws with claws on their toes. And while that is anatomically incorrect for a whale, it shows that the artist at least had some idea of whales having mammalian features. Of course, what defines a mammal is that it has mammary glands, and the baleen whale appears to have a baby suckling off it, though the artist may not have known what was going on even if he'd watched that with his own eyes. However, it must have been confusing for whalers who were butchering and processing these animals for thousands of years as to why they had mammaries, which you can see depicted here. Why would God make a mammal drink milk underwater? Can you imagine being immersed in one liquid while trying to drink another liquid while holding your breath, no less? The now illegal practice of whaling continued in the U.S. until 1971. I remember 1971. I was 8 years old, and it was in that year that I met a now unemployed whaler, a full-grown adult who thought that whales were fish for the reasons that they spent their entire lives in the sea, and that if it looks vaguely like a fish and swims vaguely like a fish, then it's a fish. And back then, whales were called breathing fish. That's how the whalers referred to them for centuries. This image, whoops, let me look back. It's supposed to go back, right? There we go. This image is from an Ipswich newspaper in 1568, which talks about local men in boats fighting against 16 of these monstrous fish, as they're described in the paper. And although this artwork is medieval, we can tell that it's an orca. Right? You see the black and the white. And the artist here is so good that this is what we'd expect a killer whale to look like if seen from the window of a submarine. A yellow submarine. You remember Disney's 1940 movie Pinocchio? I don't know, is that going to play? Oh, that's what it is. Nope, that's going the wrong way. That's grand. This is not going the right way. Yeah, I'm trying to go backward. Okay, that's the video that for whatever reason is not playing. There was a bit of video there. Okay. Disney's 1940, remember Disney's 1940 movie Pinocchio? They have the whale Monstro sleeping on the ocean floor. And these people did not know that a whale could drown, nor that they had to hold their breath underwater rather than breathing the water the way Monstro is here in his sleep. None of that makes any sense, especially not to a creationist. If God had created whales, then why would they have lungs and mammaries? Why do they have hand bones hidden inside their flippers as if they have hands, but they're wearing permanent mittens? If you believe in creationism, then nothing about whales makes any damn sense because whales are not an intelligent design. Part of the problem with classifying these animals is that mammals are known for having differentiated teeth. But the teeth of the whales that have teeth are not like the teeth of other mammals. They're not divided into incisors, canines, cuspids, bicuspids, and molars. The teeth of whales are more like those of fish because they eat fish, and fish are slippery. So the best teeth for that job is a row of uniform conical teeth, the same as fish have, the same as reptiles have. So it was especially confusing. Let me get back on the right page. It's just skipped. There we go, finally. So it was especially confusing when they found this fossil in 1764. It was the right size to be a whale, and the teeth looked like that of a whale. But how did a whale get buried 90 feet deep in a Dutch quarry? Of course, no one yet knew about geostratigraphy back then. They really didn't even know what fossils were until this one. And this one, more than any ever seen before, revealed that fossils were indeed the lithified remains of animals that were once alive a long time ago. So this thing had to have been alive once upon a time. But it's still confusing because people who knew whales said that's not what this is. This was a reptile. At first they thought it was a crocodile, but it was bigger than any crocodile anywhere in the world. And what was a crocodile doing in Holland? You know, crocodiles need to be a bit warmer than the North Sea ever gets anymore. And this clued some people into the idea that the world may have changed over time. With this fossil, we have the virtual dawn of paleontology. They knew of a few fossils by then, but nothing this impressive. They'd even found a dinosaur fossil before then. In 1677, someone found what turned out to be a theropod femur, but at the time it was mistaken for the femur of a giant. Giants were easy enough to understand back then. Theropod dinosaurs, however, no. When Napoleon Bonaparte got a hold of this fossil, he took it back to France, to the father of paleontology, Georges Cuvier. Cuvier recognized that this was neither a whale nor a crocodile, but a lizard. Not a dinosaur, a lizard. One closely related to monitor lizards like the Komodo dragon. He named it Mosasaurus after the Moose River from where it was, or near where it was discovered. Now, could 18th century Europeans understand a lizard? Of course. But the giant monitor lizards are all tropical. They could not survive in Europe. And not only that, but this one was fully marine, with flippers instead of legs, a species such as no one had ever seen before. The whaling industry had been in operation worldwide for thousands of years. Whalers knew every species, and they had seen whalers knew every species of whale, and they had seen other things like giant squids and such that are rarely seen because they normally hide in the darkness of the deep. But lizards are necessarily tied to the surface, and this one was the size of a whale. It'd be pretty hard to miss that. So Cuvier realized that if these still existed anywhere in the world, someone would have seen them, yet no one had. Such things would be eating people, eating whales and whalers. They'd be terrorizing beaches. We would know if these gigantic monsters were still out there, but they're not anymore. Thus, Cuvier concluded that some species had lived on this planet long before people did, and that they had gone extinct before we showed up. His realization dropped a bomb on the scientific community because it meant that the world of men was not created for men, because it was preceded by another world of which the Bible authors were not aware. A prehistoric world, far more ancient and markedly different than the one we know now. Given this earth-shattering news, the fossil hunt was on in earnest. In 1834, another massive marine lizard, or sea serpent, was discovered in the U.S. This one was 60 feet long or more, 20 feet longer than Mosasaurus. So they named it Basilosaurus, which means king lizard. However, more fossils were found in Pakistan, in Jordan, and a few others across North Africa. And when the new leading expert on paleontology, Sir Richard Owen, examined these fossils, he found that the teeth only looked reptilian superficially, but that they were in fact double-rooted mammalian teeth. When someone accidentally dropped one of the bones from the skull and it shattered, one of the pieces that were recovered was the inner ear, of which was of a type that is unique to whales. And based on that and a number of other features, Owen noted that just as Mosasaurus was a lizard that was initially mistaken for a whale, Basilosaurus was a whale that was initially mistaken for a lizard. And Owen noted that calling it the king of lizards was inappropriate, suggesting that it should be called Zooglodon, meaning large tooth instead. But whoever named it first gets priority. So this elongated predatory whale remains the lizard king. And once they realized that it was a whale, they had to take note of the fact that it had hind flippers, too small to be used as legs, too small even to be used as flippers. They're thought to be used as claspers when mating. Snakes did this as well. A number of fossil snakes still had hind legs that were fully developed, but much too small to be used as legs. And they're only the hind legs. The front legs had gone a lot earlier. And we assume that they must have been used in mating because boas and pythons still have vestigial leg bones that end in a single toe claw, and they do use them for that purpose, to embrace and to stimulate their mate. Though the more derived colubroid snakes lost that trait, and they get along just fine without it, showing that they're not really necessary. Modern whales don't have hind flippers. All they do have are the vestigial remnants of a pelvis that is no longer connected to the spine. And sometimes there are a couple of vestigial femurs as well. And since they evidently evolved from flippers that were once claspers, then it's not surprising that the last remnant of their pelvis is still involved in the reproductive function. After all, it is the pelvic thrust that really drives you insane. And now we have to talk about what vestigial means. Now, some people think that it has to mean a trait that was completely useless, but that's not what it ever meant. A vestige means a reduced remnant of whatever it was. It might have no purpose at all, and I can think of a few examples of traits that are like that, but more often a vestige means that it's smaller and less effective than it used to be, and that it either has a reduced capacity to perform its prior function, and some of the older guys in this room are feeling nervous, I'm not talking about you, or a vestigial trait maybe has no more capacity to perform its function at all, its prior function, and it can only be used for some secondary function. And I can think of examples like that too. I'm skipping. That's interesting. There we go. Every vertebrate flipper is a vestige of a four-legged foot. We know that from turtles. The flipper is fine for swimming, but no longer much good as a leg. The flippers of Basilosaurus are a vestige of flippers. They don't even perform the secondary function anymore and were therefore adapted to a tertiary one. What remains of the whale's pelvis is a vestige of those claspers. So it's a vestige of a vestige of a vestige. Of course, the science denialists reject that on the excuse that maybe God designed these things to look like a vestigial lineage. Because the God of creationism likes to mislead and deceive people and then damn us for being fooled by his misguidance. But something naturalists have been studying since Darwin's day is embryology. And the whale's embryo reveals that as they develop, the hind leg begins to bud, but is reabsorbed. Again, this is not consistent with the idea of an intelligent designer who created whales as they are. This is yet another fact and evidence for the evolutionary ancestry that creationism can neither counter nor account for. And not only that, but there are also occasional, albeit rare, instances of atavisms, where an evolutionary trait that was dormant or disabled may be reactivated, producing hind flippers in a species that doesn't have that trait anymore, but used to. Things like this prove that they used to have them a long time ago. How long ago? No one yet knew. When Basilosaurus was discovered, there weren't yet any radioisotopes proving or providing absolute ages. All they knew then were relative ages, indicated by index fossils in geologic superposition. Basilosaurus was younger than Mosasaurus because Cretaceous strata, where we find mosasaurs, dinosaurs, and ammonites, are a couple layers below the Eocene strata, where we find Basilosaurus, along with certain other fossils like bivalves that don't exist anywhen else. And these are worldwide. So there's a match all around the globe for these different strata. So by Darwin's time, we already had all these indications that whales once had legs, that they once walked on land, which of course led to speculation about what form they evolved from. What did the terrestrial ancestor of whales look like? Darwin himself didn't say, because there's no way he could have known. And unlike religious people, he doesn't pretend to know things he doesn't know, which is what faith is all about. But he did say something in the first edition of his book on the origin of species that was widely misunderstood. Darwin wrote about a black bear that had been seen swimming for hours with its mouth open, apparently catching and eating bugs on the surface. And Darwin said he saw no difficulty in a race of bears being rendered by natural selection more and more aquatic in their structure and habits, with larger and larger mouths, till a creature was produced as monstrous as a whale. And creationists jeered him over that, even Sir Richard Owen, who was a creationist himself. Darwin explained to Owen in person precisely what he meant, what evolution could do, not necessarily what it did do, because Darwin knew that bears didn't yet exist when whales evolved. But Owen misunderstood him so badly, and probably deliberately, the way creationists typically do, that Darwin commented after the meeting that Owen might still actually believe that Darwin was trying to say that whales evolved from a bear. And in fact, I've actually heard that argument, that Darwin said that whales evolved from a bear, but that is not what Darwin ever said or meant. Although Huxley did suggest that maybe whales had evolved from carnivorans, noting the apparent transition from sea lions to seals. After all, whales are carnivorous and evidently had been since Basilosaurus at least. But Sir William Henry Flower, who would become Sir Richard Owen's successor as director of the Natural History Museum in London, corrected Huxley, noting that whatever became whales must have originally been more like an otter, being already dependent on their tails for swimming, where seals use their hind legs as tails. And according to evolutionary principles, they wouldn't switch one for another. Flower was correct about that. And Flower had a particular fascination with whales, and he was a surgeon with a keen understanding of anatomy. Once he studied their skeletons, he offered a surprising alternate hypothesis. He noted that a skeletal affinity to ungulates, hoofed animals like pigs, antelope, cattle, that sort of thing. He said that Basilosaurus had more in common with basal ungulates like pigs and hippos than it did with carnivorans. And he suggested that we would eventually find an omnivorous ungulate that fit the other criteria. He described a primitive, generalized marsh-hunting mammal, something already partially adapted to the water, with a scanty covering of hair like the modern hippopotamus, but with a broad tail and short limbs. Fast forward some 60-odd years to 1923 and meet Roy Chapman Andrews, the real-life paleontologist and adventurer said to be the inspiration for the fictional archaeologist Indiana Jones. On one expedition into the Mongolian desert, his team found what appeared to be the largest predatory mammal in the history of the world. Known only from one skull and a couple teeth of a second species found half a century later, Andrewsarchus appeared to belong to a group of hooved predators called the mesonychids. You see, at some point in paleohistory, there was a group of generalized omnivorous mammals in the supercontinent of Laurasia, which is North America and Eurasia combined, and this population divided into two groups, where one side would become clawed predators like carnivorans, lions, bears, dogs, and so on, as well as the now extinct creodonts like hyenodon. However, the other side grew their claws into hooves, thick, fat toenails that you can walk on. And from there, you get a three-way split. Perissodactyls, those are the odd-toed ungulates like horses, tapirs, and rhinos, along with extinct forms you've never heard of. And then artiodactyls like camels, cattle, hippos, and pigs. And the third group, which are kind of in the middle of this division, that are now entirely extinct. They were the mesonychids, meat-eating predatory mammals with hooves. Damn it. Go back. There we go. Back. Why is it going forward? There we go. It's hard even to imagine such a thing, as we've never seen anything like it. In a sense, they were like sheep in wolves' clothing. I mean, horses and cattle and deer have been known to eat meat on occasion. It's just not normal. Hippos and pigs are the closest we have to that. They diverged early toward the base of the artiodactyl family tree, so they're very similar. In a sense, they're more primitive than the rest. They eat meat more often, but it's rare even for them, and their teeth show it, especially the grinding molars. But paleontologists noticed a number of skeletal affinities between Andrewsarchus and later whales, implying a likely relationship, showing that William Henry Flower's seemingly improbable prediction at the time might have some merit after all. And no one thought that Andrewsarchus was the ancestor of whales, only that it was closer to whales than anything that had ever yet been discovered. But for several decades, the prevailing view was that the ancestor of whales may have emerged from some mesonychid, which were difficult to describe to the common man on the street. Stop jumping ahead and then going forward. Go back. Why is this going forward? There we go. Most people, sadly, have no idea that there are more genera represented in the fossil record than we have alive today. That everything alive today represents only about 1% of everything that has ever lived, and that there are far more extinct than extant. Instead, they think that the entirety of paleofauna is limited to a few plastic pieces in a prehistoric playset, and that everything alive today was already alive way back then, too, as if it was always that way, since the beginning. So, when you try to explain that the closest relative of whales identified in the fossil record so far was something that probably looked vaguely like a wolf with hooves, just don't throw that part in because it confuses people, then of course creationists will say that according to scientists, whales evolved from a wolf. I've heard that argument too, and if that doesn't look quite right, if one of these things just doesn't belong here, you'll see why in a moment. Now fast forward again, this time to 1981 and the discovery of Pakicetus, the whale of Pakistan. The shaded areas of the skull were all they found at the time, but that was enough to positively identify it as a whale. In the back of the skull, they found a uniquely cetacean auditory bulla, the definitive characteristic of whales. It's an adaptation that allows them to hear much more effectively underwater, though it's not so great on land. And the jaw fragment also showed that the skull was elongated and the few teeth that were found were triangular. And these are typical mesonychid traits that are also held by some whales. And if you have a skull, it's a pretty good guess that there was a body attached to it. So they went with their best guess as to what that would look like. It's obviously already adapted to an aquatic environment somewhat, but to what degree, they didn't know. So they went with the eyes and nostrils of later whales. Notice how the eyes are down on the sides where modern whales have theirs. And the nostrils are in a position of mid-transition, as are the legs. They weren't even sure if it had legs, but it was a safe bet because by then they had radiometric dating methods which say that this thing lived about 50 million years ago, and that's 10 to 12 million years before Basilosaurus. And Basilosaurus was still an early whale, long before the split between toothed whales and baleen whales. Then, from the 1990s on, there has been a paleontological boon that continues through today. And though this illustration is from back then. You can illustrate magazines and popular press with captions saying that this is what scientists think they may have looked like. But if you don't have a skeleton, then you can't post illustrations as if you do have, which is why Pachycetus' skeleton here is entirely outlined with question marks. Above it and beside it is Ambulocetus, a larger, more derived version whose name means walking whale. In the late 1990s, there were a number of surprising revelations that completely disrupted the roots of whale evolution as it was understood back then. And we often see news stories, anytime anything is discovered where the headline says, it has to be a sensational headline that says that it implies that it changed everything and caused scientists to rethink their theories and all of that. Sensational headlines like that. But this is one of those rare instances in which that's fair. That's actually what happened. First of all, more complete skeletons like that of Ambulocetus, the walking whale, revealed a form of ankle assembly that is only found in artiodactyls, even-toed ungulates like hippos and pigs, deer and cattle, that sort of thing. That means that they may have been closely related to mesonychids, a sister group to them even, because we are talking about very close to the base of this group, where if you go back far enough, every lineage begins to look similar because they're all more closely related back then. But the ancestors of whales were not mesonychids themselves. They weren't that generalized. They had a specific trait uniquely diagnostic of artiodactyls. Now, if you don't define what artiodactyl means, if you give an example instead, you might say, well, a cow is an artiodactyl. Then, of course, the next thing you know, creationists say, why is this going backwards? There we go. Creationists crow that according to scientists, whales evolved from a cow. And hot on the heels of that revelation came another surprise. What usually happens in taxonomy is that after you've classified something by meticulous analysis of its physical characteristics, then you can do a full genomic analysis to confirm that yes, that is what it is. But on a few occasions, the genome comes back with something different, something unexpected, not a confirmation, but a correction. In 1996 and 97, genomic studies confirmed that whales really are nested within artiodactyls. We can't check the genome of mesonychids because they're all extinct. We don't have their DNA. But continued comparisons of their physical characteristics also removed them from cetacean ancestry, meaning that a combination of physical and molecular evidence revealed that regardless how similar to Andrewsarchus Pachycetus may seem to be, it wasn't a mesonychid. It must be an artiodactyl too. And the real surprise of this rare taxonomic reconfiguration was finding out that the closest living relative of whales is the hippopotamus. Then, as soon as you announce something like that, then the creationist posts on social media that according to science, whales evolved from a hippo. These new revelations continued when in 2001, another example of Pachycetus was discovered, giving us a more complete view of what it looked like. It had longer legs than expected and looked as though it was fully terrestrial. Some said it looked more wolf-like, but stop it. Backward, come on. I may have complaints with this remote. One at a time. That doesn't look like a wolf. Where am I in this? Okay. Its teeth were still differentiated, at least more than those of some later whales. It also turned out to have an unexpected trait shared in common with hippos, in that its eyes were at the very top of its head, so that it could hide in the water the way hippos and crocodiles both do, where just the eyes and nostrils protrude. which makes sense that its ears were so well adapted to the water. Doubtless that its hooved feet were already webbed, though there's no evidence yet as to whether the tail had been specialized for swimming. Thus, Pakicetus was a relatively small, marsh-dwelling, four-legged hooved animal, hooved whale with indications in its teeth that it had omnivorous and even herbivorous ancestors, before being readapted to hunt waterborne prey, almost precisely the animal that William Henry Flower had predicted. And the slide I was jumping to is not there. That's unfortunate. All right. Finally, another study in 2009 revealed that Andrewsarchus, which was once the most famous of the mesonychids, wasn't a mesonychid either. As more fossils were found, and the fossil record is continually fleshed out, it was eventually realized that Andrewsarchus was very similar to entelodonts. Entelodonts are like giant meat-eating pig-like things, though they are not pigs. They're bigger, leaner, meaner, and somewhat between pigs and hippos, which means that Andrewsarchus was an artiodactyl too. Specifically, it's a close common ancestor of whales and hippos, but on the hippo side. And the problem many people have in understanding all of this is that we have two perspectives. On the one hand, we have a belief system where you have to make believe whatever some authority tells you to believe, even if it's not true, so that baseless speculation is asserted as if it was absolute truth. Then, when the authority is wrong, as they usually are, then the belief is wrong, and it just gets wronger over time, because there's no way to correct it. On the other hand, science is a self-correcting process in which there are no authorities, no required beliefs either. And you're not allowed to say that anything is true until or unless you can show the truth of it. Because if you do say something is true when you don't have the facts to back that up, it's not called faith, it's called lying. I like to think of science as a game of 20 questions, wherein every question asked might show you where you were wrong before, and maybe your next suspicion is wrong too, but it's still going to be closer than your last one was, as you zero in closer and closer to whatever the actual factual truth may turn out to be. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so what are we doing now? Okay.
All right, Aaron will be back after the break for a few questions. Yes, let me make a few announcements here. The first one is we're taking nominations for the board of directors of Houston Oasis. As you know, there's some of our more committed volunteers as well, and volunteers really run this organization big time. So if you would like to help either with the board or with some of our Sunday gathering activities, as well as the items that happen during the week, please send us an email at board@houstonoasis.org. And we'll be in touch as well. Paige would like to come up for an announcement as well.
First, I think this might be the best program we've ever had. I just loved it. And my topic is related in a way. My Washington Post digital book club tells me that today is the first day of Banned Books Week. It starts today. They reported to me that a recent poll from Every Library Institute and Book Riot finds that 3/4 of parents think book bans infringe on their right to make decisions for their children. PEN America reports a 33% spike in public school book bans during the 2022 to 2023 school year compared to the previous year. Since January, they say that 1,915 titles have been challenged, a 20% increase from the same period last year. At this rate, the United States is certain to set a record, another record for crimes against free thought. there's lots and lots of information I've brought. I'll put some flyers back there about all the groups that are opposing the book bans. But the week will end next Saturday, October 7th, and it's ending in Houston with a banned book wagon tour, which is going to appear at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at Kindred Stories Bookstore, which is at 2304 Stewart Street. And the Kindred Books, the Kindred Stories Bookstore, their mission is to connect readers with books and curate experiences that expand on the intersections of Black identity, marginalized voices, and the world at large. So they are hosting this bus, which will arrive and hand out free copies of banned books. So I hope some of you can go to make the statement that you oppose the book bans. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. That was good. Support your local libraries. And okay, now let's take a short break. Thank you for everyone new coming in, and all of the others who have joined us as well. Please say hello to someone around you if you meet someone new. And hey, there you go. That's a good start, Aaron. Yes, we'll be right back after the break for questions. So write down your questions on the piece of paper, or we'll bring the mic around to ask some questions. Thank you. We'll be right back.
Let me see your hands. I wanna see the sky. I wanna feel the wound in your side, so I'll know who you are. is on the rise. I'm gonna open up my heart. I'm gonna open up my eyes. I'm going down to the river. I'm going down to the sea. I'm gonna dance with the fishes and sweet harmony. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, everyone, please come back to your seats. We'll begin shortly. Everyone in the hallway, please come back.
I'm going up the mountain. I'm gonna reach for the sky. I'm gonna fly like a sparrow, and the eagle so high. I'm going down to the valley, to the rivers and the towns. I'm gonna sing with people till morning come around. Hey,
All right, everyone, please take your seats and we'll begin. So we'll begin a few questions from Aron Ra in a bit, but let's do a couple of announcements here. First on, we have a care response team. Jennifer and Terry are heading it in the back. You can contact them if you need any help in that regard. We've done a few things over the years. Yes. All right. So. First, I'm going to bring Terry on. Yeah, I think so. All right, I'm going to bring Terry on for this. Next bit.
All right. Thank you. I thought you were going to do it. Thank you, Abhishek. I just wanted to let y'all all know that Jennifer and I are here. If you need anything, you can get us at care@houstonoasis.org. If you need anything, whether it's, somebody's in the hospital or somebody just needs to have some sunshine or whatever, let us know. We're not trying to get in your business, but if you need us, we're here. Anyway, and so I wanted to introduce Annie. She is the head of our children's room. So if you have children, and she's amazing. And today, CB, one of the members of our community, has been in the hospital, and it's really been difficult for him, but he's doing much better. His husband is our sound designer / wonderful Kevin. And while we, human hands solve human problems and we do things for our community, Maya and Ruby have made CB a poster for his hospital room. Do you guys want to say anything about it? Do you want to say anything? All right, proud mommy, wave your hand back there. There's mommy right there. These beautiful children. Anyway, if you have children, bring them, please. We have a room for you, and I will turn it back over to Abhishek. Thank you so much. And then
All right, before the questions, let's do one song from Jim, and then go to questions.
Some of you might have noticed a little bit of bark, a little bit of stuff I just made up on the spur of the moment. This is what happens when you give someone with ADD free rein. I'm just a cautionary tale. Thank you.
Fair warning. All right. Thank you, Jim. All right, let's bring Aron up here for some questions. The mic is in the back. Jacob has it here. If you can raise your hand and ask a question, that's only a question. No statements, please. And let's go.
And please keep questions brief.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I have kind of a two-part. Do whales eat squid and octopus? And if they do, how do they catch them?
We've got two different types of whales, the toothed whales and the baleen whales. And toothed whales, some of them do eat squid and such. Sperm whale are kind of famous for going into extremely deep dives to catch the giant squid. And for a long time, some of the only evidence, hard evidence that there was for giant squid was the scars of their claws on the faces of sperm whales. You know, now we've actually got video footage, now we've got carcasses, but for a long time we didn't. I remember when I was a kid, and giant squids were considered legendary. And now we know that there's a colossal squid as well. So it's not just the giant squid. Neither one of them are the Jules Verne thing, you know. But they do exist. And sperm whales, it's interesting because they don't have teeth on the top. They only have teeth on the bottom. But they can use those teeth sufficiently to catch the giant squid. Now, there was another one, I forget what the name of it, Leviathan melvilli, obviously named after both the biblical Leviathan and Moby Dick, at least Herman Melville. There was a fossil one that had teeth on the top as well, and they were the largest teeth in the fossil record. That's for big, stout teeth. So it's possible that they used those on giant squid, but it's also possible that they used them on other whales or megalodon. Yeah. Any other questions?
Do you see artificial intelligence and, I don't know what, 3D scanning affecting phylogenetic classifications that would be different than how we, I don't know what, eyeball it now?
Anything artificial intelligence does is going to be different than intelligence does. Yeah, I like to coin the term artificial ignorance. Yeah, because of some of the applications that I've seen for AI. One of the things that we make mistakes about, and especially like in movies and such, whenever you come up with an android organism, like every sci-fi always has the same kind of character doing this, where their English is perfect and their morals are perfect and then cadence is perfect and they're just trying to understand human feelings and all this, is that because they're not us, they're not a chemical mismatch of hormones and whatever, they're not going to have crushes on their crew members or whatever, that they will think entirely different than we do. And everything I've seen from AI is when you try to explain, when you want to get AI to produce something for you, when you explain what you want, then the AI produces it, and you're like, no, that is not what I meant. So you have to be very explicit, because AI goes a completely different direction. It's like special needs computer.
Okay, will there be any videos on phylogenetic history of plants, particularly plants like redwoods and cacti?
I'm sure someone will make one. I have to follow what I think people are going to be interested to see. We are animals, so we want to see stuff about animals. And I mean, I would have to do an awful lot of research just to do plants, and I may do eventually. But I don't mind doing it because I like when I have to research something. I was working with an arachnologist earlier this year when I was working on the evolution of spiders, and I had to work very closely with this other person going over all this wealth of information that I had no idea. So it's always a benefit to me to learn more, to do this other series. So I might do the botany thing, because I don't know anything about it off the top of my head, which is why I haven't done one yet.
All right, would you consider doing an occasional debunking video series on evolution, or rather what Hollywood calls evolution, and how and why they are wrong, such as the latest Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie that furthered the silly sci-fi trope of an alien being coming down to a planet, kidnapping an organism, modifying that organism, and thus performing evolution on them?
Yeah. That's a very good idea, and I should do that one, because the way evolution is portrayed in movies is so awfully bad. There was a David Duchovny movie called Evolution, roundabout Y2K. Man, that was bad. Just for many different reasons, but especially the way they're depicting evolution. It's like that wasn't evolution; that was transfiguration. That was metamorphoses. That had nothing to do with population genetics. That was a single individual that's turning into something else, and in the course of one lifetime, evolving into multiple species in a sequence. No, that's metamorphosis. That's nothing like evolution. And everything that we do, like when you look at Star Trek, you've got the Klingons and the Romulans and the Vulcans and the humans, and it turns out they're all related to some other space race. Oh, but we all evolved. to look exactly the same, apart from pointed ears or weird foreheads. And that's the only difference? Oh, and we can interbreed? We evolved from microbes, but we're able to interbreed because we were programmed. No. That is a video that should be made. Thank you for giving me that suggestion.
You brought up giant squids. I wanted to ask, were they discovered before or after Jules Verne's book?
Giant squids were known, but I mean, it's like so many things that people would report seeing in the ocean. Sea serpents and all kinds of. People reported seeing all kinds of crazy shit. It's just some of it was real, and you can't tell what.
How big was it?
It was so big. All right, was there another? Because I'm not going to continue that joke.
No, I think that was our last question.
Okay,
Thank
you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. That was an amazing talk. All right, let me bring up Richard Andrews here, who's the treasurer of our board.
Hey folks, Rich Andrews, the Oasis treasurer. Those of you who have already helped us out by dropping a little bit of love in the black hat back there, thank you very much. We also have modern ways of giving. If you look on the back of the bulletin, you'll see a QR code there that connects directly to our bank account, basically. And so we pay rent, we pay the speaker. In fact, if Aron Ra doesn't put his information into the phone there, he's not going to get paid. We pay the musician. And we're also gradually saving up money to someday have our own building and stuff like that. So it's a way of supporting secular community. If you're not able to give, don't worry about it. We love just having you here. It's all about community after all. So thank you so much.
All right, before we have one final song, one more announcement. Yep. All right. So before we have one more final song from Jim, I'd like to mention some of the events that are going on over the week. We have on October 19th, Blues Night with the Mighty Orc at the Big Easy. And then we have Oasis cards. Please contact Richard Andrews for more information on this. That's a TVA. And then there's an Oasis book club as well. On November 22nd is the next one at Coral Sword. Contact Will Judy in the back for more information on this. And let's do one final. Yeah. Anyone? All right. We have the Los Lobos concert on November 14th? October 14th. Okay. Okay, it's October 14th at the Miller Outdoor Theater. Contact Deborah or see our website for more details. Our website has lots of information there. We keep in touch with Meetup, Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel as well with our old videos here, including the one that's being streamed live right now. And let's do one final song.
It's interesting to note that this week is going to be Banned Books Week. I've seen an exhortation that you should live your life as if it were written down. Florida would ban it. I'm not there yet, but I plan to be. In the meanwhile, I think I'll go find a copy of Naked Lunch. There in that room, at the foot of the stairs, stood this plaintive young thing with a long flaxen hair. Tried to score me a reason to go say hello, but just stood there like a fool. And then she saw me from the corner of her eye. She looked up and waved with a tentative smile as she came up to me where frozen I stood, and she held me real tight. She said to me, Georgie, how have you been? Why haven't you written? When did you come back in? As she wept a salt tear that rolled down my chin, I had no heart to tell her my name is Jim. When our two souls traverse and our own path to hell, a chance meet at the ninth parallel, two lonely hearts that was given up outright, two passing ships in the still of the night, two passing ships in the still of the night. So there I was, folks, with this girl in my arms. Didn't know what to do to keep her from harm. Tried to scare up something real clever to say, but just stood there like a fool. And then out of nowhere, this guy slid on by, took her arm by his shoulder, gently led her aside as he said to me sadly with, you hate it when you forget the lyrics of your own song? Anyway. There out of nowhere, this guy slid on by, put his arm on her shoulder, gently led us aside, and he came to me slowly with, oh well. Sometimes late at night, while laid alone in bed, I think of dreams of words never said. We could both be released from events of the past, but I stood there like a fool. And she said to me, Georgie, how have you been? Sorry about that. As they say, age before beauty, 1 out of 2 ain't bad.
All right. Thank you, Jim. That was great. Don't worry. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Aron. Thank you, Aron Ra, for coming in. And this is good. This was a good weekend. Lunch will be at Tacos A Go-Go in Midtown on 3704 Main Street. Excellent reviews. They have vegan taco options. I believe there's street parking as well. All right. Join us next week here. The main talk will be given by Aidan Scully and music by Johnny Walco. All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend.